Hey, there we go. We're live. I am forgetting how to stop the music. There we go. I'm terrible at fades, but that's okay. You know what I'm good at?
What are you good at, Mel?
Starting podcasts, and that's what we're doing right now with the Digipod
Oh yeah,
Pokécast show.
love it. Yes, that is the show you've tuned into. If you're seeing both of our faces right now, we're about to talk about Digimon and Pokemon. Although this time around, probably more Pokemon.
Yes.
Unless we find a lot of connections to be made. I have a feeling that most of the Digimon connections today will just be me wanting a Digimon approximate to what we're going to be talking about, which is
Yes.
Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that today because my wife and I both just got back into it, um, and it's a hoot. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited because it's allowing me to learn more about these new Pokemon that are completely new to me in a way that is not so um, demanding. I'll just be honest with it. Like not as because I'm a
Yeah.
busy person, so like it's just not an option for me to play like the Game Boy games and stuff like to the same extent and to absorb like to play them and get what I'm getting out of Pokemon Go as far as just such a condensed just knowledge burst of of just everything going on with these new Pokemon. It's really cool.
I want to set the scene really quick.
Yes.
So Pokemon Go came out in 2016, made by Niantic, a company that made Ingress, one of the only actually working augmented reality games where it means they actually use the map of the world and they play. And then they made Pokemon Go, which was revolutionary for multiple reasons. One, it was the first like mobile Pokemon game that actually had interaction with people. Two, this is the first time people even knew about augmented reality games, so much to the point that new laws had to be made. And three, it was hella fun. Corey, did you play it all when it first came out?
I did.
Okay,
I cards on the table right now. I didn't think it was very much fun. I
fair.
thought that it was kind of a boring app.
Okay,
But I loved it for like that week and a half or so. I mean, that's an exaggeration. I feel like um, we played it for maybe about a month or so. But there was, I feel like within that month, a couple weeks where there was this beautiful sense of community,
yes,
particularly around Midtown and stuff.
yes,
We would be at comedy shows and stuff, and everyone would be not just on their phone, but like on their phone with other people on their phone, looking at
together.
each other's phones, it together, and it was really fun, and like that aspect of it was really fun. Where it started to lose me was there just wasn't much to do in the game at that time
Yeah.
in 2016, and I don't even recall. Like, was there a battle element to it in the very beginning?
Ooh,
Because I don't really
I
remember
don't
doing
think
any kind
so.
of
No.
battle type thing, like with
Well,
gyms or anything like that.
I think gyms
Just,
were there from the beginning, but
I think
I think
gyms
they
were, but was
operated
there any?
different.
Exactly. I don't
Yeah.
seem to recall there being any kind of battle aspect to the gyms. I thought that the gyms were more of just like um,
Yeah.
basically glorified Pokestops. But I also very vaguely remember that time, so it's like
Yeah.
maybe it was a little more involved. But I just remember like not really getting much out of the well, also the the collecting of it was less intriguing to me because in that first release it was just that first gen
Hmm.
of Pokemon, so there was no discovery for me. Like
I
these were all Pokemon I knew,
I
you
think
know.
that's one of the most interesting parts about it because so many people played Pokemon Go that weren't like into Pokemon, and because of that, they were familiar with the 150 from
Mhm.
childhood and they were like kind of into it. So like it helped encourage people that were coming back and new-ish to not be overwhelmed because there wasn't that many. But I
Oh yeah.
feel like there was a small window of people who knew more about Pokemon, who are into monsters, and felt bored because it was the only 150. So it's like you had the Pokemon obsessed like me that was into it. You had the complete novices that were into it. But people like you in that little special window, it totally makes sense that you wouldn't be interested. Because yeah, it's like I've seen these 151 so much over and over. Because even to this day, the Pokemon Company gives so much special treatment to the original generation.
As they should, I might add.
Yeah.
I think as they should, because like that's what built your company. That's what built your entire cultural footprint, was that original 150. Like I think they're incredibly important to our culture. That's just my take on it anyway.
I think you're right in that sense, but I think there needs to be more diversity. For instance,
Yes.
Charizard gets it all the time. Charizard got 2 megas. So Mega Evolutions was like the first like special gimmick. So Charizard got 2 megas, and then Charizard got a Gigantamax form, and surprisingly, he hasn't gotten anything this new generation. But it just feels like Charizard gets everything, and is just overplayed. It's like, come on, there's 150 of them, so we'll see.
I'm with you there.
But
But to that same point, like I think that's also what made it appealing in that very short span that I was playing in the first thing, is that it did have a very warm nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed. Like I genuinely enjoyed that. It just didn't have like staying power. And I wish I would have stuck around with it, because when we then have put the app back on, I'm connecting with friends who never stopped playing. So they have these like massive, profiles with these crazy stats and everything, because they never stopped. And I think it's so cool that they got to have those discoveries along the way, to see how the app has grown over the last several years.
yeah,
Whereas for me, it's just suddenly just a wash of information. Of like,
lot.
okay, and now there's trails now, and I know that's an even newer thing.
Yeah, I don't even know
which I
much about
still-
that.
I haven't been able to experience them yet, because there's no trails in our neighborhood. We're gonna have to like go to, and I was very surprised. We're in an area that has a lot of young folks, and we're by schools. There's Pokestops and gyms everywhere, and yet can't find a trail. It just,
And
these are the things.
we're the capital of California, like one of the bigger cities, like maybe not the biggest by size, but like notoriety, kind of. Not trying to brag by any means about Sacramento, just like logistically, Sacramento seems like one of the ones that would be earlier to get something, at least like a few, and I've not seen any, but I haven't Googled where any trails are. So
Exactly. So maybe there are some, because I refuse to believe that there's none in our Sacramento area. Like there must be some like around Midtown, where there's just so much Pokemon stuff happening.
Yeah. We'll have to hunt one down.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we'll do an out on the town live stream one of these nights.
That'd be fun.
I can stream from the phone, so we could go out and find some live Pokemon. But yeah, so that's the past. Pokemon Go, I thought when it came out was amazing. It was one of the first time I ever was like invited to do something with people my age group that did involve drinking, which was like baffling. But yeah, before we like kind of go on to your new experience and that stuff, one thing I want to touch on about Pokemon Go is the playground rumor sense, because you said everyone was like talking and showing each other their phones during that like first month, and I feel like a lot of that is because the game had not a whole lot of features, but there was a chunk of stuff that they didn't explain at all. You're like, how do I pick which Eevee to get? Because there's no stones, and people are like, oh, I heard if you nickname it, the first time you give it nickname, it'll evolve to that one. It's like stuff like that reminded me of like back when I was a kid, and we were like, oh, if you defeat the Elite Four 100 times, you can actually evolve Charizard, because there was no internet to look up, and so Niantic just did that. They just didn't tell you how to do things.
I love that.
I thought it was magical.
Really cool. Yeah, that's the best word for it. It has a magical sense because it is this sort of like we don't get to have these things in real life. Like,
Yeah.
like we don't get to have that. So to have something that's so near to that that we can like enjoy in such a casual way. That's the other thing that I just really, really have enjoyed about this game is that it's not like homework like some games can tend to feel like that
Yeah.
for me. I'm not a big gamer. I don't think I ever will be, like as far as like I'll go through trends where like I'll just happen to play a little more video game through a certain month
I'm the
and then
same
I'll
way.
put it
Yeah.
down for months. I'll put a game down and then I'll play it again for like maybe a month straight after that. But so with that, like I love that I can put down Pokemon Go whenever and it actually doesn't negatively affect anything.
Yeah.
Like I can just pick it right back up and it's right where I left off. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's real time, but unlike farm sim games or anything, it's like you don't have to go in and collect stuff.
Yeah.
There's of course daily things, but there's not much repercussion to not doing that. And even
Nope.
when you play, it's so easy to play at like a dedicated time that just feels normal because you're not like setting it down to play a video game. You're just like, oh, I'm going to go for a walk at this time each day. This is something I may or may not do while doing it. You might pull it up, or maybe you're running some errands, and so you're like, oh, I'll pull up Pokemon Go while I got the grocery store in line or something.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so easy to pick up, and there are so many different aspects of it that like feel rewarding. There's like the sense of just finding and catching Pokemon, especially new ones, but then also the long-term stuff of like getting all the candies to evolve them. Uh,
Hmm.
and then also one of the most rewarding thing in any Pokemon game is something you can experience and go, and that's a shiny. Once you caught one,
Yes.
do you want to
I
talk about
did.
that?
I do. Yes. So far I have a few shinies now.
Oh, okay.
The first shiny I caught was a Gulpin. I
Yeah.
love that little guy. I love him. And I love his shiny form because he's this lovely little blue. I
Yes.
love that particular shade is really, really nice. So I named him Gordy. He's Gordy the Gulpin. And which I will say, like that was a big decision for me because I knew I was going to nickname some Pokemon
Hmm.
Gordy.
Oh.
Um, because Gordy's just a very important name as far as like I mean one of my just all-time like very favorite and most influential songwriters is a guy named Gord Downey.
Okay.
And then just the great Canadian history of gourds. Like there's just it's just I really enjoy how that's just a name in Canada more
Gordy
so
Gourds.
over
Yeah.
here. Yeah, because there's like Gordie Howe. He's a famous hockey player. He's Mr. Hockey. And so yeah, I knew that there was going to be a Gordy, so it had to be a good one. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
just gonna throw Gordy on just any old Pokemon. It was gonna be the shiny Gulpin. Um, and so I'm working on that guy right now, and then I also have a shiny Squirtle,
Nice.
also a delightful color. I really like
Not
that.
much of a
Uh,
change for that one. Very
no,
subtle
very
on the
subtle.
front. The back a little bit more
Exactly,
noticeable.
exactly. It's that shell that looks just a little more like I don't know. It's more chill. I don't know
Yeah.
something about it. And then I have a shiny Charmander, although I just evolved it to a Charmeleon, so now it's shiny Charmeleon. Um,
Charmander, typically orange. Shiny is like kind of a goldish yellow, right?
yep,
What's
exactly.
Charmeleon? Because it Charmeleon's a darker red than Charmander. Is it just a
It's
darker orange?
Yeah, it
Okay.
seems like it's pretty much just the same sort of orange. I mean, I haven't really paid much attention to it after I evolved it.
Yeah.
But because what's your take on Charmeleon?
I'm kind of a fan. I like.
Yeah.
So a pretty big trend with starter Pokemon is their middle forms are kind of an embodiment of teenagers. They're like dorky in some way, and
Yeah.
some are trying to be edgy, but they're kind of dorky. And Charmeleon fits that. Something about the single spike on the back of its head is like so dumb compared to
Yeah.
Charizard's double spikes, and the fact that like Something you'll notice with a lot of these starter Pokemon is the first stage and last stage have more in common visually. That's not even just starters. Like a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
three stages have that. But with starters particularly, like Charmeleon gets that darker color and then Charizard goes back. Um, so yeah, I've been a fan of Charmeleon. There's just this edgy dorkiness to it. What about you? Not a fan?
Maybe, yeah. Not, I kind of haven't been, just purely as an aesthetic. Like,
Yeah.
I just, exactly what you're saying, except I didn't find it as endearing, I don't think. Like, the dorkiness of it. Like, I've always thought that it just kind of looked uncomfortable. Like, we'll put it this way, and I don't think this is a very, you know, special thought to me necessarily, but most of my favorite Pokemon are ones that I would just want to hang out with, like I would want as like a little buddy, or not even a little buddy, but just a buddy in general. I don't think I'd want to hang out with Charmeleon.
No.
Like, I don't know if that makes me a jerk, but like he's a little off-putting.
I think I think that's a little bit of the design though, is that like you had this cute one and now it's off-putting for a while to help you motivate to like get to a better place to get a
Yeah,
Charizard who is just cool, you know.
yeah,
Although we've seen how dorky Charizard can be too, but yeah, much more of a friend. Like you want to hang out with a Charizard.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, that's like at its core, Pokemon designers will tell you that a Pokemon should look like it could be a friend. Um, which there's definitely Pokemon that break that rule. There's a Pokemon called Eternatus, and I'm like, I don't think people are going to want to be friends with that. It's like a space skeleton dragon. Um, so it's like a skeleton, but like black, sharp, like angular bits instead of bones, and makes up a dragon with like a little glowy core. It's cool, but like it doesn't have that like endearingness to be a friend. But most Pokemon do, and I think those middle stages are the only ones that don't, purely to like fuel you. You know, like you know Rowlet, the little owl dude you like.
Hmm.
Its middle form gets like a tuft of hair, and
Yes.
it's got the bow tie, and it's like got one arm out. It looks like a snobby rich teen, um,
Hmm.
and like I kind of like that. I'm like, oh, you little shit. Like I need to get
Yeah.
past this, and I like it because knockoff Pokemon games always make this mistake of like the middle stage is just middle between the two forms. So it's like, well, it's not cute, it's not cool. So what's its point? Whereas Pokemon, like even if they're not endearing and fun, they're at least so different, and it makes sense why they're different that they're rememberable. The mill stages are
Yeah.
rememberable in a way. There's so many mill stage Pokemon people don't like, and especially when it's like the current gen, it's very easy to hate them. But after a while, I'm able to look back and be like, this little piece of shit like is its own thing, and I love that. And I love it. That's not just a mixed blend.
Think maybe another hang up I have in general on middle level evolutions is, and maybe this is a symptom of commitment issues,
Oh,
but I'm afraid to get attached because it's just going to leave me. I mean, it's going to become something else,
so
and it'll still be with me. But like that is something I really struggled with, just with Pokemon and Digimon in general. Well, I think with Digimon, maybe that's why I felt more comfort in it, because you just have that one.
yeah,
Like that's your friend, and he's not going anywhere. That's your friend.
and he
Whereas with
changes.
Pokemon,
Yeah,
you have these like they set a precedent in the show as well of like they could just leave. Butterfree could go.
yeah,
Like,
because
it's hard. It's very hard for me.
yeah, so Digimon has that like entanglement of destiny,
Mhm.
um, towards like Pokemon. They're their own beings, but like also some of them are so sentient. It's like, yeah, dude, I'll let you go and have your life, like Butterfree, you know.
Yeah.
And we see less of that, but that kind of stuff still happens. And in the show, and I don't know how canon this is still, but there was a time where it was implied that when a Pokemon evolves, it's a new Pokemon. Like, uh,
Interesting.
Yeah, so like as though it wasn't the same one at all before. And now I think it's a little different, but like there are seen like examples of like radical changes. Like in the last in the main Pokemon series towards the end, there was a new protagonist, Go, and he had a score bunny. And when his score bunny evolved, it is very much an angsty, hot topic little teen, and it acted like that. And like there's just a radical shift in personality. And it's like, man, that sucks because like you just had your little guy, your little friend, and
Yeah.
now it's evolved. But you end up seeing like some endearing stuff of like when it's kind of being a little shit, but it's not obeying Go for the sake of helping some like stranded Pokemon, and then evolves to Score Bunny or to I forget the final one's name, but just a bigger soccer rabbit. And it's cool. It's got like the charm and like the friendship of its first form. But yeah, so I don't know that the fear of like losing the middle form. I understand. I've never ran into it. But one thing you should know is there's an item called Evolutionite or something like that. And essentially in the games, if you put it on a Pokemon that can evolve, it makes them stronger. So like it's a way to make a form before its final form stronger, and sometimes even better than the final form for certain competitive niches. And then mechanics aside, there's also Everstones, which if a Pokemon holds that, they just won't evolve. So you can just keep them, you know. And that's for that's for leveled Pokemon. I mean, like look at Pikachu. Ash always kept it Pikachu. He never evolved it to a Raichu. So, yeah, some people just want their smaller forms.
Exactly. I mean, I look at my Cacnea and I'm like, I don't not want to have a Cacnea.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
You love
I
that
like the
Cacnea.
evolved form. I like what he turns into, but like he ain't as cute. He just ain't. He ain't as cool.
I love his evolved form. There's something
It's
about
very cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah. There's something about how like angular but like pudgy the shapes are on his limbs. I can't remember his
It
name
looks like
though.
he's wearing like hammer pants or something.
Yeah.
He's got like parachute pants. It's just a cool look.
Yeah. And then he's got
It's just not
that
as
dumb
cute.
pyramid helmet, but he pulls it off. He like makes it cool.
Oh yeah.
He's like that kid in school where you're like, it doesn't matter what their mom makes them wear. They're still cool.
I did not know this kid.
Oh,
This
okay.
kid you're describing did not go
No.
to my school.
Um, but yeah, some of the earlier stages can be really good. I have a hard time committing to an early stage as a favorite. There used to be some that I liked more, but then as I like personally have played games and got attached to bigger stages, I like find myself liking them more in a way.
Mhm.
So, question is, Gulpin,
Yeah.
very special to you. Your first shiny,
Yeah.
a little dude. Are you going to evolve him?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm gonna.
but not
Because I do-
Cacturn.
No, I mean, I have two
Oh,
right now. One of them I'm gonna keep golden forever.
one is your friend, and the other's just a
Exactly.
Pokedex mule.
Pretty much. Well, and like, maybe that other one, because they're both nicknamed. So like, that one will just be my buddy that's the evolved form,
Yeah.
and then one will be my forever Cacnea buddy. I got Don Prickles and Mr. Prickles.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you've been posting a lot of pictures with your Cacturn, which I think is one of the coolest things about Pokemon Go. Is just placing your little buddies in the camera.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In fact, and I haven't tried it, there's a feature where you can pair up with other players and do it. So
Yep.
like you can
We
both
did
see
that
both
once.
Pokemon. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack and I took like one picture. I don't think we shared it at all, but like we were just playing with that feature once to like see how it worked, and it was fun. Yeah, it was neat. Man, they were hanging out together. it was fun. I've been mostly buddying up with my Snorlax lately.
Oh yeah.
My Snorlax Hattrick.
Because he has a
He has a
hat.
hat. He has a hat. And that has been a new development in being interested in the game, because as I've become more acquainted with it, I've like, because I'd say like the first several weeks of playing the game have been like just figuring out how it works.
Was it
That is
hard?
very fast. Not hard,
Just a
but like
lot.
just a lot. That's
Okay.
exactly it. It was just a lot. And like being hesitant to like even taking the time to learn certain stuff, because like I don't know, I'll get all these blocks where I'm just like, oh, I don't even know if this part of it's fun to me. Maybe I don't even need to learn how to do battles.
Yeah.
But then Jacqueline started getting good at battles, so I was like, well, this actually looks kind of fun. Maybe I
Yeah.
can, because it also it struck me as like, is there even technique to this? It's just button mashing. I found that there is some technique, but
Did you
um,
know you can teach your Pokemon a second charge move so you can choose between the two?
yeah,
I
and
just
that's also what I'm working towards.
I knew about that. I had never done it. I just now gave one of my Pokemon a second move.
But so after I started getting more comfortable with it, that's when I was like, okay, I'm actually gonna try to fill out all these buddy things, because I had been doing the buddy thing, but I didn't like really,
Hmm.
um, you know, make any effort to try to get like the hearts for each of the things.
Yeah.
But now I've been like going through my day and ending it with pretty much all hearts, except for obviously, go on a trail together, or a route, since we
Yeah.
can't go on routes. But I've been doing the battles, I've been doing the treats, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's neat seeing my Snorlax like me more.
Yeah.
And I
And then
know how silly that is, but it's kind of validating.
Pokemon does a really good job at making these things feel like friends, even in the simplest of games. And in Pokemon Go, you get a little ribbon if you've been like doing enough with them. Just like
It's great. Yeah,
uh
it's just, I love it.
in Pokemon Sword and Shield, maybe some other games, if you raise your bond to full, when you throw your Pokemon out at the start of the battle, they like look back at you. They like just want to see you, and then they start the fight. They're like, "Oh hi,
The
hi
best.
buddy, I'm gonna go kick this ass now."
I love that so much.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it's really strange though, because if you look at the Pokemon anime, it's about the battles, it's about becoming the best. And we talked before about how like the anime has to have human characters because that's how a show moves on, because Pokemon themselves can only make for interesting like shorts.
Yeah.
But it's mainly about like battles and stuff like that. Whereas the games, it's so easy to just be like, hey, these are my six little guys, and we're only battling because we just want to go further. We want to explore more. We want to do more. We want to get stronger together. Um,
Mhm.
Completely different. And I think in the games, like, no matter how bad the games can be at times, it's like that little thing that just feels like an adventure. And I think it's interesting, and this is where you can start complaining because I know it's in you. Digimon is the entire inverse. The show is so much about, hey, as a Destin, this is a bond with one friend I have. Agumon is a reflection of my best traits, or Gomamon is a reflection of who I want to become and how I can better myself.
Mhm.
Although we balance each other out because Gomamon doesn't have enough, like, control about a situation. So it's like Digimon are partners and they better each other, and it's like that one-on-one connection. And the first game kind of did that, but not really, because you keep recycling them. So no Digimon game really does that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no real like training of a team aspect in Digimon. Like
Yeah.
that's just not really part of it. Even I feel like when you did have multiple Digimon in like the later games, like it just doesn't, no, it's just not as profound
Yeah.
of a connection of like, because you're also not catching them first. You don't
Yeah.
catch Digimon. I think that's another big part of it, is that you have that beginning of your story with that Pokemon, is that you'll remember where you caught him, and if it was a particularly tough battle to get him.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, going back to Pokemon Go, those are usually the ones that I will nickname and create any kind of long term of like, okay, this is a pretty high CP on this one, and he was a real challenge to catch.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this one strong. This is the one I'm gonna nickname. This is the one I'm gonna keep for a while, and if not forever. And so yeah, you don't have that with Digimon.
Yeah, Digimon, it does lend itself to see more cool forms, because you're constantly evolving, then devolving, and going different routes. So, like,
Yeah,
in an aesthetic, there is that, but yeah, there's no bond. Because you don't really, and that's the thing, it's like you don't talk to your Pokemon, but that experience of catching them, the experience of like when they faint, because as Pokemon's so easy, it's kind of rare, so sometimes you're like, oh no, little guy, and
yeah,
there's just so much more experience and adventure to it, to whereas Digimon games are more of a compelling story typically, like the story has plot, to whereas Pokemon games are like, I'm a kid, I'm getting the badges, and then there's a side plot that is good sometimes but not developed enough.
yeah.
So it's just, I don't know, I think it's interesting in the sense that Digimon tend to be better made games, and the show is more about like bonding. But the Pokemon games, I've never seen people get so attached to fake little things like you do in a Pokemon game. And
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned some of the ways of like how Pokemon Go really sets that up, and the handheld games do a good job too in different ways, but truly the best way is Nuzlocke, which I absolutely have to get you to play a Nuzlocke sometime.
And the only thing stopping me is playing a video game. Like
Yeah,
actually, like that is the block for me of like I don't have that in me.
yeah.
I would love to be able to have that amount of spare time. That'd be so cool.
I feel it. There's a lot of times where I don't, even if I have the time, it's just like not the energy, like the mental
Yeah.
energy for a game.
Because it's a focus. Like if
Yeah,
I'm playing a handheld game, I am only doing that for, at least, even if I'm trying to like, okay, I'm gonna make time for everything tonight. I'm gonna work on this, I'm gonna work on that, and I'm gonna make some time to play a video game. Okay, what does that mean? 20 minutes? All right, sure. I'm gonna sit down and play a video game for 20 minutes. That is 20 whole minutes that I have to focus on a video game.
yeah,
That is very difficult. Whereas with Pokemon Go, if I'm walking to the store or something, I'm like, okay, I can bond a little
yeah,
and then
yeah.
put my phone away and then take it back out. I'm like, all right, I can enjoy this a little bit more. And it's
It's
so much more conducive to my brain.
it's also in real life. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can see Snorlax and how big and how much room he takes up in the stab foyer,
Yeah.
and how funny that is.
Yes.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing, is like Go is your adventure, to whereas the games, they have their story, and it's like the best way to play the game sometimes is just to like dissociate what's going on and just like kind of just look at what's going on for you. Like that's why Nuzlocks
Yeah.
are cool, because they make like memories and events that aren't so much the game but your experience.
How so? Like give an example of that because I'm very intrigued by the concept of that. I wasn't seeing how that would
So
lend itself to those sort of moments.
in a Pokemon Nuzlocke, the main rules are you can only catch the first Pokemon in each area. So you have a very limited pool. If a Pokemon faints, you release it, it's considered dead. So it's like, oh, there's consequences, and like you can lose a friend. And the third rule is you have to nickname every Pokemon. So they become friends. And the best thing about a Nuzlocke, unless it's fourth gen, the best thing about Nuzlocke is you use Pokemon you never would have before, because it's no longer like you get to choose what Pokemon are cool or like strong. It's like, hey, I need something. I have 3 water types, and that doesn't make a team. So this dumbass rock that I've never been a fan of is on my team. And then after like going through the whole adventure and like almost seeing it die, or like it pulls you out of like a clutch situation, you're like, you have memories. You're like, oh, remember
Yeah.
that time Rockarola like just like pulled through and like kicked ass when I thought it would just like die. Like it's so easy to bond with these, especially when you stream. I did a stream once, and like everyone got really attached to like this Bidoof I had, and like when it died, we had to hold like a little funeral, and it's like that's not the story of the games, but in my playthrough, that's a part of the story. Like, oh, I got this guy, I raised him, then he died, and we had to mourn that. But then also we have to figure out how to go forward. Like having a water type was really good, and then I didn't. Um, and I do some different nicknaming things for my Nuzlocks. Like sometimes I'll just do all food, or like I did all medical stuff. But sometimes I'll just name them all after my friends, and so like
So
to
like that could have baggage.
yeah, yeah. So the the way you just like don't really, typically a Nuzlocke run is also a game that you've played before, maybe a few times even, so you just don't listen to the story really. And so you just go through, and it's so easy to like have your story then. Some games are better and some are worse for it. um, but yeah, it can be a really cool experience. um, i'm I'm curious what it would be like for you in a game you've never played, and just in general you've hardly played any Pokemon games because you've only played the first gen ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I've really only played Red and Blue.
yeah,
That's it.
and you keep saying, hey, this is really cool, and I go, it's from 5th gen.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that has been a wonderful discovery for me. Well, discovery is not the right word. I think it's more of a shift of perception that I've had since becoming more acquainted with these newer Pokemon, is that before playing this particular game, anytime I would see like a new, to me Pokemon, and that could be, old to
Yeah.
most people at this point.
Could be a
Um,
crystal Pokemon, yeah.
yeah, like it would feel um not just foreign, but like I don't know, like I
It's not a
in
Pokemon.
very plain terms, I just didn't like the design. Like I think that's just kind of what it came down to. Is like I just didn't like what it looked like, and I think seeing them more, it has allowed me to see connections between them more. So it's like there's more, and not even a literal like through line connections, but in the same way of if you're looking at all the first gen, they look like they were designed by basically the same team of people.
Yeah.
And I feel like seeing more of the Pokemon from the different generations has allowed me to just become more comfortable with the different styles. Like,
Yeah.
and now they don't seem strange to me. They just seem intriguing. And I find myself being more discerning of what I like and what I don't like. Because there's still plenty of designs where I'm just like, I feel like it's a boring or just kind of goofy, dumb looking Pokemon. But then other ones I think are fantastic. So it's a mixed bag.
I'm curious. So, when I mentioned that, like, 5th gen, it's just a lot of, like, extra stuff that you seem to be interested in. But the Pokemon themselves, like, have you noticed a certain generation? And Pokemon Go doesn't have a lot from 9th gen and just a few from 8th gen. In fact, Pokemon Go has added the 9th gen starters, but not the 8th gen starters, which is funny and upsetting. But is there a generation you feel like you're most keen to out of the ones you've been seeing?
Well, that's the funny thing about it, is that I don't even know what generations I'm looking at.
Yeah. Well,
And I kind of like that at this point anyway. I feel like I'm slowly going to become more familiar with, because I just can't help but know things.
yeah.
Like what if I start to get interested in something, I'm going to then look it up. But I'm still at a point now where I'm kind of enjoying um, the sort of babe in the woods
Yeah.
aspect of it, of like, this is just a Pokemon. I don't like, I can tell that it's a lowland or
Yeah.
like a version of it, of a Pokemon I know. But beyond that, unless it's something that I know is just from this newest region, um, with like the uh, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but is it Fuecoco?
Yeah,
It's
Fue
like the little
Coco.
alligator. Fuecoco.
Hmm.
So I just happen to know through advertising that that's a
Yeah.
slightly newer one. So like, okay, I know that that's of this region. But no, like I don't have a generation that I've been geared towards because it's all just new to me.
Yeah, makes sense. We'll say Pokemon themselves are like trying to make people think less about generations and more about regions. So as they release things that are like related to a region, they kind of go back to some of those design motifs, which I really like. It kind of makes you think like, oh yeah, these are all water type Pokemon, but you can see influences on them just in design, shape, language, and stuff from what region they are. You know, they might not be genetically related at all, but you're like, oh, they're from Paldea. They kind of share some similarities, and it's just because that was the way they were designing Pokemon for that generation. You know, but then they'll do some wacky stuff and like try to design something more akin to an older generation because of some type of tie-in,
Yeah.
which I really like. And you know, I feel like the generation, like knowing which things is which gen, is very much just like a nostalgia game thing. To whereas knowing the region is more like akin to the spirit of what Pokemon
Yeah.
is and
Yeah.
everything.
Absolutely.
Um,
Because they're not saying, like, in game, they're not saying, oh, and this Pokemon from this, from second generation. They're saying where it's literally
yeah,
from,
you know,
and it helps you buy into the fantasy of it.
and then you get things where it's like, okay, so here's what the last year has been, or 2 years have been like. Uh, we got Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, which were the remakes of the fourth gen game, which take place in Sinnoh. And then we got Pokemon Legends Arceus, which takes place in Hisui, which is Sinnoh of 200 years ago. So it's like ancient Sinnoh. It's like
Hmm.
feudal Japan of that
Yeah.
place. And so that was really cool. And we got like some new Pokemon, some new forms. We got a lot of Unova Pokemon. Unova's the region based off New York City. And then now we got the new game with Paldea. Paldea is based off the Iberian Peninsula, and we've got some hints. And then we get the DLC for Paldea's, which takes us away from, or we get the DLC for Scarlet and Violet, which takes us away from Paldea into a new area. And then we find out this new area is actually in Unova. And the way Pokemon makes their games is they release a new game and then they do a remake, and then a new game and a remake. So the next remake coming out is Unova, that New York one. So like that's right around the corner, and we're seeing hints to it all the time. We're seeing new forms of some of the Pokemon from there. Like Unova has these two fish, Baskel or something, and in Pokemon Legends Arceus, we got a third form and an evolution for it, and we're seeing that third form even in the DLC. And so it's really cool to see them like add on to old designs in a sense to hint of what they're going to be doing to remake those games and add more to them. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah, but I don't know. I'm really curious to see like going forward, like what kind of like trends of designs you like and dislike, and how they match up with like some of the more, uh, just for lack of a better word, popular opinions. Uh,
Yeah. I know that a take that I currently have
mm-hmm,
and feel like it will continue. And this is something that I kind of remember feeling even as a kid is I'm less drawn to designs that have a like a component to them that kind of breaks the illusion for me of this being a organic living thing, like a bow tie or something. And sometimes it's the Pokemon that I like that will have a feature like this, but it does kind of break the illusion a little for me. And I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but
I get what you're
it
saying though, like the
yeah,
organic creature. Um,
yeah. Like sometimes there's just or it could be as oh, um, there's one newer one that just he's like a is he a duck or no? He's like a little weasel or something, but he holds a big log, and he's holding like he's got a prop. I don't care as much for Pokemon who have props like Farfetch'd
Yeah.
with his leak, because it's like you see them like well not with Farfetch'd, this wouldn't be an example, but like sometimes like they'll evolve and they have this item. Like where'd that come from? And
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of magic. I
Um.
guess I don't know.
Yeah. I think they've been playing around with that, like figuring it out. So you'll see a Pokemon born with it, and a lot of it stems from Game Freak is not good at making games, so they can't design a Pokemon model and then it gets the item and it's part of it. Like they can't do that.
Yeah.
So they find ways to like cheat into the lore to it, and some I think are better than others. So Klefki, are you familiar with Klefki?
Not yet.
Klefki looks like a key ring with like a little head and then some keys. And a lot of people hate it. I love it because if you read about it, the Pokemon, those keys are not part of the Pokemon. The idea is that Pokemon is a fairy steel type. And the reason it's fairy is because, like the Fae, it goes around stealing shit. And it just fucking steals people's keys. Which is, I think, is a very, like, sinister thing. And I like when fairy types are kind of evil because it helps it not be the cute pink Pokemon type, but like more magical. And so Klefki, in the model it's just the same keys, but the idea is in that world they're always different keys. It goes around stealing those keys. And you got Flabebe, who's always like on a flower, but the idea is at birth it goes finds a flower, bonds with it, and then as it grows up it continues to protect this flower until the flower is like integrated into its design in the final form.
Mm-hmm.
And like
I have one of them and I like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Flabebe. Farfetch, I think the idea is that like it finds a leak and carries it. Like it finds one that it thinks it's good and then it uses it as a weapon. And there's two versions of Farfetch, and they elaborate a little bit more on that idea in the other version that you'll see eventually. But yeah, it can be kind of hard. I think the one you're talking about with the log, it's like a log and then it turns into a steel girder and then it's two like concrete pillars. You're either talking about that one or there's a koala that's like always holding a log.
I think I'm talking about the first one.
Okay,
I haven't seen the evolutions past it, but the first thing you described, it's like, I mean, how else do you describe it? It's like it's a little mammal that's holding a log.
Yeah.
It's like, I think lumber is in the name. It's
yeah,
like
limber, or timber, lumber, something like that.
Timber. It's something timber. Timber is in the name.
I think it's
or something like that. Yeah.
Timber, girder, concader, or something like that. I don't know.
You're just saying sounds now.
yeah. I'm just making stuff up.
Very, very throaty.
I agree that like it is jarring. It's with the way it's implemented in the games. I don't think they're necessarily bad designs, but it's like it takes more disbelief at the moment. And like if you're trying to do that thing where like you're thinking of this as your adventure, it's like you're missing out on what should be a special part of that Pokemon's like life, Like imagine like getting a Farfetch and you're like, "Oh, hey little guy, like let's go find a leak together." And yeah, I don't know. It's like that's something that'll never be in Pokemon, but I guess if you use your imagination, you can make it magical. But it's like it's too much. It's not the same as like seeing something and kind of pulling your own adventure story out of it, because it's just there. It's just bleh. At least with like Klefki and stuff like that, I don't know. It feels a little bit better, but yeah.
That reasoning makes a lot of sense to me. The idea of, okay, let's just treat this as basically a catch-all for what these, like, we know that they would look like different keys.
Yeah.
If it was a different one. But obviously, for any game or show, we're not going to have an individual key every single time you see this Pokemon. That would be absurd. Like, I wouldn't expect that of them, So I feel like that is an acceptable level of, like, suspending disbelief.
True, but...
Because it's like, all right, this is what that's for, It's for the illusion.
What makes me mad is like it wouldn't be hard to model like 7 different keys and it just randomly picks 3 for each
Sure.
one.
Sure.
Um, it's like little things about the Pokemon games that could make Pokemon more organic. They just don't do. Everyone's all excited because in the last 2 games, size variation's a thing. Like they might be smaller or bigger
Yeah.
slightly, and it's like such a small thing, but like we all care about it. It makes them like when you see 2 Pokemon same species right next to each other and they're a little bit different height, it feels like a world that's alive. Um,
Yeah.
and they could do something like not change their colors but just make them slightly different. One's a little bit darker, one's a little bit lighter. Gotta be careful because some shiny Pokemon are just like a bit lighter, but
Yeah.
it's those like little things they could do that I just hope to see one day. So
Quick note on shinies,
yes.
because I've done a very little bit of reading, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. I couldn't recall if there's any other real benefit to a shiny beyond essentially being a collector's item. Like not an actual collector's item, but you know what I mean. Like
They're
it's
alive,
a little,
Cory.
it's a little set apart. Like there's no they're not improved in any way, right? Like
No,
they're
they're
just, they're just a slightly different color,
yeah.
and there you go.
Technically, because of like game code stuff, there have been times where they interacted different, not intentionally. But yeah, no, they're just a alternate color, a rare color.
Yeah,
Pokemon's never like dived into the lore of it either. Like they've never said like, oh, it's a genetic anomaly or it's magic or anything. But they exist in the shows.
I was just gonna ask.
And
They're in the shows.
they're in the
Okay.
shows. It's pretty rare,
Huh.
but they're in the shows, and the game does address them. The shinies weren't in Gen 1, but they came out in Gen 2, and in Gen 2 there is a shiny Gyarados in the Lake of Rage that is just losing its shit. And it's one of the few encounters where like you actually see it in the world and you swim up, go to it, and then you can catch it and battle it. Um, and that was like super huge because like shinies have been coming more and more common, but they still take work to get. Um, and that was like a give me one, but it was like an experience. But yeah, they're just alternate colors. Some of them are bad. Some of them look real dog garbage, to be honest. And some of them are cool. A lot of the early Pokemon, they had like an algorithm that just like changed colors. So like a lot of purple Pokemon turned like this nasty green. Um, but nowadays they kind of put more thought into it. Like there might be an actual like reason, like lore wise behind it, or they'll just make something that looks nice. One really cool one, a Pokemon that just came out days ago actually, because it was part of the DLC for the new game, is Diplin, which is like a apple covered in sap, and there's like 2 little dragons in it. You see the tail of one and the head of the other, and it's like a candy apple. It's red, but its shiny is golden, like a golden apple. And they even went as far as its special attack, where it like launches some of its spit, which is that like syrup on it, is actually golden for the shiny. No mechanic difference, but flavor wise, I don't know. I think it's really cool.
That is neat. I love that.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to ask you a question.
Yes.
What's a Digimon you like?
A Digimon I like. Today wasn't a day that I came prepared for this. I usually go and look. So, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, just Digimon in general and ones I like. And in the nature of Pokemon Go, I'm going to say one who I have to look up his name real quick. But while I do this, you can vamp a little bit. It was part of the bracelets, like the hey, I'm getting exercise, so I'm going to add numbers to a Digimon. Which you got one of those, right?
I did get one of those and played it approximately 2 times. It's now just sitting on like my little end table by my recliner. I'll probably pick it up again at some point. It wasn't very fun.
Yeah,
That's kind of like it just didn't have any real interaction with the Digimon at all, which was a pretty big disappointment. Um, and there's no not just no interaction with the Digimon, but there's really no way that you can do anything beyond walk. Like there's no control that you have to like really gauge anything or try to improve something in particular. There's nothing like that. It is just you walk and then it'll go into battles that are essentially um, like on autopilot. You don't have any control over them. It's just based on the stats that are dictated by your movements, like that you have built up with your, walking.
there's a companion app though, isn't there? Like for the battling and
There,
stuff.
there is, to be fair, I have not
Yeah,
really tried that because I was so just kind of crestfallen by the watch game
yeah.
itself, where it was just like, yeah, I know there's an app. I'll maybe try that out at some point. And I think I even downloaded it, and it just was not very user friendly.
It sounds like
Um,
they stripped a lot of like just typical Digivice toys, you
mhm.
know?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's I was expecting that it was going to be that married with like a fitness bracelet.
Yeah, not
And
worse.
again, to be fair, they were very clear in the packaging of like it is a fitness toy. Like they use the word toy so much because they don't want anyone to think that it's an actual like a Fitbit or something.
Yeah.
They're like it's a toy, but you know,
Um, yeah, it's so disappointing because I growing up I loved those Digivices, but um, the Digimon they made specifically for that is Pulsemon and his evolutions. I love Pulsemon. I think Pulsemon's a
yes.
rad little dude. Got the little like lightning bolt hair, uh, really good like green yellow color scheme, and just I don't know. He's not for a TV show, so they were able to like push the edginess of his like the spunky energy edginess like because if I had to watch this little Digimon be the partner of the main character of a Digimon show, he'd be annoying. Like you look at him and you're
Yeah.
like you'd be annoying, but
Mhm.
very cool as a design and for
Yeah.
that I think. So yeah, mine's Pulsemon. Corey, would you like to end the show and tell us what Pokemon you like?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any surprise here.
No.
Pokemon I like is my boy Cacnea.
Yeah,
I love Cacnea.
little
He's great.
Cacnea.
He's a cactus. I love his eyes. Just the it's so like classic cartoony without being like um I don't know, silly cartoony. Like the the connection I'll make for that would be like I feel like for the most part a lot of the duck Pokemon have like very overtly cartoon, like classic cartoon looks that don't jive well as much with me. Whereas with the Cacnea, I love like the dark, sunken in, like it feels well. It feels very Digimon. Maybe that's why I like Cacnea so much. He
It
looks like a
does.
Digimon.
Yeah.
He
Uh,
looks like he should be called Cacneamon. But I love his little crown. He's just cool. He's a really cool design.
he is very just so good. Perfect harmony of like cartoon but not overdone, like you said. Because yeah, you nailed it with the duck Pokemon. A lot of the duck Pokemon have a hard time finding that balance.
And
Um,
I will blame that on Donald Duck. Like
yeah,
it's because like it has become such a established archetype of like American, especially cartoons. So we're trained to when we see a duck that's drawn, we're gonna think of Donald Duck. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality.
would you like to hear a elongated Dex entry for Cacnea?
Yes, because I only have little. I know I want to wrap up the show because I'm starting to get hungry. But I do
Oh,
want to make one little complaint here. I want um, more details in the Pokedex entries on Pokemon Go.
yeah.
Yes, I know I can just look up this information online. Yeah, I know it is readily available, but I wish it was just in the app when I catch the Pokemon so I could just read everything about them. I want it
Yeah.
all right there, you know? And
Uh,
instead, they give you tiny little blurb that doesn't give you shit.
Yeah, yeah. The Pokedex in games is just always so lackluster, where it could just be more and more in depth. But here we go. Cacnea uses its thorny arms like hammers to attack its opponents. It's able to live in deserts for 30 days without any water due to its body being able to store moisture. The beauty and fragrance of its yellow flower depend on the harshness of its environment. The flower releases a strong aroma to attract prey, and when prey approaches, Cacnea shoots sharp thorns to bring it down.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I guess
that is the only part that gets in the Pokemon Go Pokedex
yeah.
entry, which is cool enough on its own. Like, I will say, like, when I read that, I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, he just shoots thorns at his like prey. That's a really cool description.
Yeah, but to know like its flower actually matters, you know?
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And that it's dictated by its surroundings. Like, that's...
And do they mean the harsher, the like better of a flower, like it withstood better? Yeah.
That's how I interpreted that, and I hope that's what it means. But yeah,
that's
I
nice
so.
too. Well, those two guys will go somewhere on the frame as stickers. We will be back on October. I forgot how our show works. It's every other, so October 5th.
Yeah, I think I'll be there.
Yeah. We'll have more monstery things to talk about.
Yeah. Tune in next time. Maybe tell us, stuff you want to see on the show. If you're actually watching the show right now, we like doing it. We're gonna keep doing it whether or not you watch it. Yeah. So,
and
deal with that.
Even if you're watching the YouTube archive, I have to go in there and add thumbnails. So leave a comment. I'll see it there. Since I'm seeing those videos get more views than the live stream.
Yeah. So. I would love for this to find its nice little pocket of weirdos who like both of these things and just want to have that lively chat with us. Yeah. So join the chat. This has been a lot of fun, Milk. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Hey, hope you have a good night.